Apa yang mengakibatkan dari 9 ini bisa balik lagi ke 40?
Mungkin buyback-nya kali ya. Buyback-nya makin gede, kita bisa lihat nih dari DeFi lamanya ya. Revenue. Oke, ini revenue-nya ya. Nah, ini kan kita harus tunjukin dalam konteks chart. Nah, dia chart-nya itu revenue-nya naik terus gitu. Naik terus, ini yang mengakibatkan hyperliquid-nya ini, mana ya? Revenue. Hyperliquid ini dia buyback-nya makin kencang. Buyback makin kencang ya saya sebutnya ya supply crisis lah gitu ya kan. Karena kan tadi udah bilang 7% diambil sama dari 33%, 7% udah diambil assistant fund. Udah kering nih. Banyak orang yang top tier-nya OG-nya itu nggak jual sama sekali. Kita bisa nge-track juga mereka jual atau nggak. Makin kering lagi gitu. Jadi terus ada namanya hyper EVM, duit hyperliquid-nya di staking, di segala macam gitu. Itu lebih kering lagi. Jadi ya sirkulasinya itu semakin kecil gitu. Jadinya ya menurut saya kalau tinggal ada butuh suatu bet lagi, suatu news yang bagus, orang suka itu akan pumpnya sangat-sangat easy karena kering. Dan kalau ada playbooknya micro strategi nih di Hyperliquid, yaitu HYLQ namanya, yang kalau teman-teman sering nonton poker, Tony G namanya kan. Nah dia company-nya itu treasury-nya adalah Hyperliquid gitu. Jadi institutional play-nya udah mulai gitu di harga 30-an. Jadi kalau kamu di bawah 30, kamu lebih pintar daripada dia. Kalau bahasanya orang-orang gitu ya kan. Cuman ya we don't care gitu ya kan. Nah, ini revenue-nya naik terus gitu. Revenue-nya ada terus nih dari dari TG, dari listing gitu ya kan. Nah, ada terus semakin banyak likuidasi semakin revenue-nya naik. Revenue-nya naik, buyback-nya makin gede.
Dia ini waktu dia melakukan buyback, itu tuh lakukannya periodically atau daily atau kayak gimana?
Daily. Dia buyback-nya per ketika ada 10.000 masuk duit trading fee. Nah, ini juga bisa lihat on-chain gitu ya kan. Nah, kita lihat home gitu. Kita bisa lihat home. Nah, kita buka website ini. Nanti kalau kita ngobrol berapa lama nih assistant fund-nya. Nih. Misalnya kita, mana dia ya? Oh, lagi loading. Nah, ini. Nah, nanti kita ngobrol berapa lama nih. 11 detik kita buka page ini. Dia udah collect $227. Nanti ada 10.000 dia buyback. 10.000 dia buyback. 10.000 dia buyback.
Berarti dia bukan setiap hari lagi, tapi setiap
ada duit
menit
gitu.
Jadi ada kan beli. Dia kayak DCA.
Betul.
DCA tapi duitnya di fund sama futures.
Iya, sama kita-kita.
Sama
gitu.
kita. Sama trader-trader.
Jadi kalau mau rungkat, mending rungkat di Hyperliquid. Tanggung gitu ya kan.
Mending rungkat di Hyperliquid, soalnya bikin Hengki tambah kaya.
Sama-sama.
Sama-sama kalau sama punya porto Hyper.
Betul. Streaming bukan karena saya nggak percaya Hyperliquid, tapi streaming belajar dari kesalahan. Gitu. Waktu itu $30.
2020 Desember itu
streaming bukan karena saya nggak percaya Hyperliquid, tapi streaming belajar dari kesalahan gitu. Waktu itu $30 udah all in-nya. Itu rekening nggak ada duit gitu. Rekening itu di bawah 10 juta. Kamu percaya Bitcoin nggak? Kalau percaya Bitcoin naik, ya hype akan ngikut gitu. Kalau kamu nggak percaya Bitcoin, ya jangan. Kalau kamu pelajarin fundamental Bitcoin, oh saya sependapat nih Bitcoin akan naik $1 juta lah, berapa, nah hype-nya akan gini mainnya gitu. Saya nggak ngerti ya. Mungkin mereka konglo-konglo ini ada grup WhatsApp kali ya. Gitu. Tahun ini saya perform ya gitu ya, karena biasa tahun ini perform, tahun berikutnya ya gantian gitu. Maka selalu rotate, karena mungkin mereka sadar kalau retail participation kita itu nggak bisa pecah. Gitu.
Oke. Nah terus berarti waktu naik lagi ini gara-gara mereka mungkin udah menyelesaikan masalah yang attack-nya itu ya. Mereka udah ganti, udah rubah sistemnya, udah update supaya nggak bisa di-attack ulang gitu ya. Bahkan yang gue lihat menarik juga udah ngelisting di beberapa checks gitu.
Betul.
Yang major kan. Dulu kan soalnya kan bisa, mungkin sebelum sana. Apa tanggapan lu, gimana menurut lu checks luar, gue nggak berani ngomongin yang lokal ya, checks luar menanggapi Hyperliquid? Kayak Binance ngelihat Hyperliquid, OKX ngelihat Hyperliquid, kayak gimana tanggapannya?
Mungkin elephant in the room ya, mereka too big to ignore gitu. Pertama ya mereka nyerang terus-terusan gitu kan, mereka ngomongin terus-terusan ya sekarang mereka udah mulai listing gitu. Nah, kenapa ini playbook, kenapa mereka nggak listing? Mungkin pertanyaannya itu gitu ya kan. Karena untuk listing suatu koin, itu kita exchange harus punya barang. Dia karena ketika kamu buy, jadi bisa sell gitu ya kan. Karena kalau kamu buy dia nggak bisa sell, artinya kamu main perpetual gitu. Fiktif lah. Konteks ini Hyperliquid beauty-nya lagi adalah dia nggak ada visi gitu, nggak ada early investor, dia semua funding pakai duit dia sendiri gitu. Jadi dia bangun Hyperliquid pakai duitnya, dapat revenue dia beli lagi gitu. Jadi ini benar-benar anaknya gitu. Kalau yang lain, kalau teman-teman tahu koin-koin sebelum listing itu biasanya dia minta, lu kirim ke gue 20% baru gue listingin lu. Makanya ini juga ada data gitu ya kan. Ada data yang menunjukkan kalau mayoritas koin listing itu rungkat gitu ya kan. Kenapa? Salah saya buka. Kenapa mayoritas koin listing itu rungkat gitu? Karena nih, contoh STRK gitu ya kan, Starnet, Mode, Blast gitu. Ini Februari ya gitu ya. Cuman teman-teman bisa tahu kalau yang udah listing di checks itu berkata bye-bye karena mereka mau cari exit.
Tentang Mercury retrograde, di mana
indicators point towards increased demand for their AI exposed tools, and they're just being conservative at this point.
I have a question about the U.S. strategy and the uncertainties around it, because you have the U.S. expected by Jensen Huang to approve those first batch of U.S. licenses for those H20 chips to China. But here's what's still uncertain. How many licenses are going to be approved? Then there's also whether the permissions will go beyond existing inventory for NVIDIA and include orders of new H20 production. What does that mean in terms of financial uncertainty moving forward?
Yeah, look, when it comes to NVIDIA, we know they are on their Blackwell architecture. So these are the Hopper chips, the scaled down configurations. And they're about to release their new Rubin architecture as well next year. So clearly, if you're a customer in China, you're looking forward to what else will I have access to after H20s. Yes, they may have H20 shipments from NVIDIA, but then these configurations continue to get better in terms of power and efficiency. And that's what will determine, what kind of sales NVIDIA will have in China and what it means to gross margin. At the end of the day, the latest chips that NVIDIA sells are gross margin accretive, and that's what you want when it comes to NVIDIA having that higher portion of the the latest chips that they're making.
So NVIDIA, China is undoubtedly important, but you think about the competitive landscape in China specifically, and Jensen Huang has made the point that they've lost market share to the likes of Huawei and other homegrown competitors here. I think the number that he cited was their market share was 95%. It's gone down to 50%. Is the genie out of the bottle, or can they actually grow their market share once again? Maybe not to 95%, but above 50%.
Even in the U.S., when you look at their share in inferencing, it's not close to 80 to 90%. That was the case a couple of years back when training was a predominant kind of force when it comes to AI. So clearly, the hyperscalers making their own chips, whether it's Google or Amazon, is having an impact even in U.S., and the same is applicable in China. I mean, there are hyperscalers, and then you have players like Huawei. So clearly, I think NVIDIA won't have 80, 90% share, but this is a growing market. We're talking about $1 trillion in data center spending. So even if NVIDIA has 60, 65% share, you're still talking about 500 billion plus in revenue, if it turns out that data center spending will be close to $1 trillion in the next 5 years.
Mandeep, thank you so much for joining us this morning. That is Mandeep Singh of Bloomberg Intelligence, with a lot changing geopolitically and therefore a lot changing for some of the hottest trades on Wall Street. Now coming up, another hot trade, rare earth stocks surging on the Apple deal with MP Materials. We're going to talk about what the deal is all about next. This is Bloomberg Open Exist.
loves earnings.
I know it's like your Super Bowl, right?
I can't wait. It's like opening presents in the morning.
All right, it will be exciting.
Nobody covers earnings like Bloomberg. From the world of politics to the world of business, Joe Matthew and Kaylee Lines deliver news, insight, and analysis live 2 times a day, every trading day. Balance of Power at 1 and 5 Eastern, only on Bloomberg. Welcome to the world of decentralized finance.
Massive outperformance from Bitcoin.
Bloomberg is covering all things crypto, the people,
the tectonic shift emanating from Washington.
All we're looking for is clear rules and the ability to build in the United States.
Crypto shouldn't be partisan.
the transactions,
Really a record-breaking moment.
Crypto VC is back.
and the technology.
It's really the beginning of a global on-chain economy.
And if America doesn't embrace it, we're going to be left behind.
Bloomberg Crypto, only on Bloomberg.
Bringing you up-to-the-minute geopolitical news whenever and wherever it happens. I'm David Gura in Ottawa, Canada, and this is Bloomberg.
Welcome back to Open Interest. Let's take a look at the stock market where gains are fading right now. The S&P 500, I'm going to go ahead and call that unchanged even though the color is green. The NASDAQ 100 is already there. A big reason why is right behind me, actually. NVIDIA down a little bit. Again, this is such a huge company that just losing its gains really putting a weight on the index. I want to talk about some of the gainers today, though. Johnson & Johnson, as we've been speaking about, beat and raised quarter, and then you take a look at the rare earth companies as well. MP Materials has been absolutely on fire. It's backed by the Pentagon, and now it has a deal with Apple as well. So all of the stars aligning. 2.7%. You might say that's not that much, Sonali, but consider year to date, its gains are approaching 300%.
It's absolutely an incredible surge. And to your point, Apple had struck that $500 million deal to buy rare earths minerals from MP Materials, and it's sending rare earth stocks higher. We're going to bring in Bloomberg stocks reporter Matthew Griffin, who's been following the story. How many rare earth stocks are there, honestly? I mean, is this a trade that is kind of hard to find to begin with, given that rare earths can be hard to get as an asset?
Absolutely. This is not an easy sector to get exposure to if you're a U.S. stocks investor. MP Materials actually has the only operational mine for rare earth metals in the U.S. That's in California. And so I think that's why you look at some of the other names like Ramaco Resources. Their connection is actually that they're developing a coal mine that will produce rare earths sort of in addition to that. And then USA Rare Earth is another name that is actually currently building a magnet factory, which they say is going to be online commercially next year. So basically anyone with any connection to the sector and plans in the sector is getting a boost as investors look for way in.
And the ETFs are coming too. I can smell it, a whole batch of new filings on rare earths. But you make the good point. If you're looking for a pure play, it's really MP Materials, the only U.S. mine for rare earths. And give us the context here, Matt. When it comes to rare earths, we know that the U.S. is really eager to build out our supply. And I feel like maybe the average investor who's just getting socialized with the concept doesn't appreciate how important these are.
Yes, so I mean, at a high level, we all, it's a safe bet, use rare earths every day. They enable the colors in your smartphone screen. They're used in catalytic converters in cars. They're used in electric vehicles. You need hundreds of pounds of them to make an F-35 fighter jet, so the U.S. government really cares about them. And their mining, and especially their refinement, is dominated by China, which has become an issue during trade tensions when tariffs have ratcheted higher between the two countries. China has actually used export controls on rare earths as a way to gain leverage.
And that goes a long way to explaining why the Pentagon is also backing MP Materials. Matthew Griffin, great reporting as always. That is Bloomberg's Matthew Griffin. And coming up in the next hour on Open Interest, it's a big one. We have the CEO of MoneyGram joining us on the possibility of an IPO. We'll also speak to the CFO of Johnson & Johnson. Remember, a beat and raise quarter, even with the looming threat of pharma tariffs. And we'll also speak to Dwight Scott. All that and more coming up. This is Open Interest.
There is a nice confluence between the long-term investor and what we're trying to do. We have an operating principle that's in our handbook, take the long view. When we went public, we put a timeline up on the screen for the whole company in an all-hands meeting. And that timeline went from founding to 100 years out. And the IPO was one dot in 1 year on that timeline. And we tried to orient the employees to, this is a wonderful event, this IPO, but it's a moment in time on a very long journey.
This is a company that you want to exist in 100 years.
We do.
Wall Street doesn't think in...
No, they think in like hours. Yeah. And what I've learned of Wall Street, and particularly Wall Street investors, when they say they are long-term investors, that means they'll keep your stock for like a month. There has been one instance where I did something that was just for short-term stock, and I felt so bad about it that I don't think I'll do it again.
What was that?
There was one quarter, a few quarters ago, we were not going to beat the quarter. We were gonna probably just hit it. And so far we beat every quarter. So we were all like, wait, what? Our perfect record. We're like a 4.0 student that is gonna get a B for the first time. This is not good. And I decided that for a short period of time, at the end of a lesson in our app, we would show 2 ads instead of 1. Turns out that that by itself was good enough to beat the quarter, but it's bad for the product. It's not good. After that, I'm never doing that again.
At a time when policy in Washington is driving Wall Street, we draw a distinction between the rhetoric and the action, bringing you market-moving guests and original reporting. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Bringing you up-to-the-minute geopolitical news wherever and whenever it happens. I'm Anne-Marie Hordern in Alberta, Canada, and this is Bloomberg.
This is CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by Progressive Insurance.
I'm Deborah Rodriguez. President Trump's just weighed in on growing calls for the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, to release files on the late pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. In a new Truth Social post, the president says, quote, radical left Democrats have hit pay dirt again. He calls it the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. Among GOP Republicans who want the American people to see more, House Speaker Mike Johnson. Correspondent Scott McFarland.
Trump supporters have accused Bondi of withholding Epstein records after the Department of Justice released an unsigned memo last week saying the convicted sex offender didn't have a client list, and they wouldn't disclose any more information. House Speaker Mike Johnson, a strong Trump ally, is calling for more transparency.
It's a very delicate subject, but we should put everything out there and let the people decide it.
An arrest in Los Angeles after the double murder of American Idol executive Robin Kay and her husband Thomas DeLuca. LAPD Lieutenant Guy Golan.
When the homeowners returned back to their residence, a violent struggle ensued between them and the suspect who was already inside their home, which resulted in the victims tragically losing their life.
Police believe the 22-year-old suspect entered the house through an unlocked door. An Israeli-backed American aid group says 20 Palestinians were killed today in the crush of a crowd at a food distribution site. The BBC's Yolande Nell reports from Jerusalem.
GHF put out a statement saying it was heartbroken by this tragic incident and described a chaotic and dangerous surge. It blamed agitators. It said there was credible reason to believe that they were people who are armed and Hamas affiliated among the crowd.
They're bracing for the possibility of bad weather in the Gulf. CBS meteorologist David Parkinson.
This is a very moisture-laden system, so 4, 5, 6, 7 inches of rain possible in portions of the Gulf Coast, particularly Louisiana and maybe the Gulf Coast of Mississippi as we go to close out the week from this tropical disturbance.
There's a new flash flooding risk in the Northeast after New York City got socked with half a foot of rain in just 2 hours Monday. 2 people in New Jersey died after their car was swept away by rushing water. A former president and first lady are finally putting the rumors to rest.
It's my husband, y'all.
She took me back. Michelle Obama welcomed the former president with a big hug on today's episode of her IMO podcast.
Wait, you guys like each other?
She assures her co-host brother, Craig Robinson.
There hasn't been one moment in our marriage where I thought about quitting my man.
She says they've had ups and downs, but she wouldn't be who she is without him by her side. This is CBS News. There are new rules for tourists in one Italian hotspot.
Frustrated at how visitors behave, the charming seaside town of Portofino has brought in a new dress code and more. As of yesterday, tourists are no longer allowed to walk barefoot, topless or in swimwear through the Italian Riviera town. Drinking in the street is also banned, as is sitting or lying on public paths, walls and parks. Portofino has a year-round population of just 400, but sees an influx of 100,000 visitors each year. Elaine Cobb, CBS News.
A big hunk of meteor will be auctioned off in New York today. Sotheby's Cassandra Hatton.
This is a massive 54-pound Martian meteorite that landed in the middle of the Sahara Desert.
It's expected to bring in as much as $4 million. The Dow is up 70 points in early trading. S&P ahead 1, NASDAQ down 76. This is CBS News.
This is Bloomberg Intelligence with Paul Sweeney.
The real outperformance has been the U.S. corporate high yield. These are two big-time blue-chip companies. One person's chaos is another person's animal spirits.
Breaking market headlines and corporate news from across the globe.
Our view is that the economy is slowing down.
There is the possibility of a death spiral.
Both quantum computing and AI are going to power the future.
People are just buying everything with tech.
Bloomberg Intelligence with Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio, YouTube, and Bloomberg Originals.
Good Wednesday morning from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York City. To our worldwide audience, we are streaming live on YouTube as well. Lisa Mateo and Paul Sweeney with you. Coming up, we're going to check in with Brendan Murray, Bloomberg Global Trade Editor, get the latest on the tariffs. That August 1 date, President Trump, it's going to be a pretty hard date. Woo Jin Ho, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Technology Analyst. We're going to talk about HPE. There's got a pack there with Elliott Management in terms of shareholders. Yelena Shuleyateva, one of our favorite economists, she's over at the conference board. We'll get her thoughts on some of this inflation data we've seen over the past couple of days. The PPI data that came in today, pretty darn benign, coming in below expectations. And Allison Williams, the hardest working analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence over the past couple of days. She covers all the big banks, and we'll wrap it up here. We heard from Goldman Sachs. Bank of America was today. Morgan Stanley was today. So we'll get the latest on the big banks. So a lot to deal with in terms of the earnings front as well as the economic calendar, as well as the news flow coming out of D.C. We're on top of it all. Right now, let's kick it all off with Charlie Pellet.
Thank you very much. And here's what's going on. All three of those bank names you mentioned, Paul, they are trading lower right now. I'll have more in just a moment. This Bloomberg Business Flash brought to you by IBKR. Financial advisors switch to Interactive Brokers for lowest cost global trading and turnkey custody solutions. No ticket charges, no conflicts of your interest. Learn more at ibkr.com/RIA. We got the S&P 500 index waffling, shuffling between small gains and small losses, a decline in chip makers keeping broader gains in check.
Menteri Keuangan kita, Sri Mulyani, menteri favorit lu, adalah menteri keuangan segala zaman, siapapun presiden, mulai dari SBY, Jokowi, Prabowo, menteri keuangannya pasti Sri Mulyani. Menarik. Kenapa? Karena ketika negara harus berhemat, ketika krisis di mana-mana, Sri Mulyani, menteri keuangan kita, itu justru mengeluarkan peraturan menteri keuangan PMK nomor 32 tahun 2025 yang isinya meningkatkan dan menambah anggaran buat pejabat di negeri ini. Luar biasa pintar ini orang. Negara lagi krisis, orang miskin bertambah. Kata Bank Dunia sampai 60%, tapi yang dilakukan apa? Menambah anggaran mobil dinas pejabat di Indonesia. Teman-teman tahu, sekarang di Indonesia lu sebagai pejabat eselon 1 lu bisa dapat anggaran sampai 1 miliar. Jadi hampir 1 miliar lu.
As for the bank macro backdrop, Gerard Cassidy is head of U.S. Bank Equity Strategy at RBC
Kita
Capital
mengumpulkan
Markets, and
pajak
he was a
tahun
guest
lalu
this morning
sekitar
on Bloomberg Surveillance.
1.750 triliun.
A 3.5, 3.75 Fed funds, 4.5, 10-year is very positive for the banks. In fact, you have to go back 20 years to find that kind of environment where the Fed funds rate was over 3% with a positive slope. So that would suggest regional banks could, which have lagged the money centers, could be the play for the next 6 to 12 months.
Gerard Cassidy of RBC on Bloomberg Surveillance. Goldman Sachs after earnings down 0.1%. Morgan Stanley after earnings down 2.3%. Bank of America down 0.3%. By the way, we got its CEO Brian Moynihan coming up 2:30 p.m. Wall Street time. And briefly in the metropolitan New York area, word of delays with New Jersey Transit reporting rail service delayed up to 60 minutes in and out of Penn Station. I'm Charlie Pellet. It's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Well, I just got you guys brought it up. Just a couple of more details we got crossing on the Bloomberg here. That delay, by the way, caused by a trespasser fatality near Newark Airport. So as of now, 1 hour. Yeah, well, of course, everybody goes by Newark Airport for the most part, but you've got 1 hour delays up to 60 minutes.
Okay, Charlie Powell, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Lisa Mateo, Paul Sweeney, we're live here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, streaming live on YouTube as well. The red headline crossing the Bloomberg terminal. The EU proposes a 100 billion euro Ukraine aid for 2028 through 2034. So we'll have more reporting on that. We'll stay on top of that. Let's take a look at some of the stocks on the move today. I'm Paul Sweeney alongside Lisa Mateo, and we're joined by Bloomberg's Christine Aquino. Christine, what do you have?
Well, Paul, we got to take a look at the banks today. Big day, so let's dig into it. I want to look at Goldman, ticker GS. So Charlie mentioned shares are down across the board for all these banks reporting today. Goldman shares down 0.2%. So pairing some of those earlier losses, but you would not expect that from a bank that just reported its best stock trading quarter in history, right? That's trading revenue of more than $4 billion, which is about $600 million more than what analysts are expecting. Fixed income revenue and investment banking fees also healthily exceeding analyst estimates. But I was asking the Markets Live strategist just before I came on here why the reaction, right? Very muted. And that is because Goldman shares seem to be essentially a victim of their own success. We did see those shares hit record highs earlier in July. A lot of expectations heading into the earnings season. And even though Goldman handily beat them, it really was a sense of price to perfection when it comes to the share price. So we're just seeing a little bit of a pullback there today.
Bank of America also lower this morning. They're down like 0.4%, but they posted this record second quarter. That's crazy.
That's right. That's right, Lisa. Yeah, so Bank of America, ticker BAC, shares also pulling back this morning. Interesting, though, because, you know, the equity trading revenue that was really the key to Goldman's success was a little bit softer, you know, in comparison for Bank of America. That did $2.1 billion. That's, you know, that's nothing to sniff at, and it did top expectations, but it is slightly softer from the previous quarter. But net interest income rising 7.1% to more than $14 billion. Also, CEO Brian Moynihan commenting on the state of consumers, saying that they are resilient, they have healthy spending, they have asset quality. So pretty upbeat assessment there of how households are doing.
And as Charlie Pellet just reported, we have the CEO, Mr. Moynihan, on Bloomberg Television with David Weston, 2:30 p.m. Wall Street time today. How about our good friends down in New Brunswick, New Jersey, Johnson & Johnson?
Yeah, Johnson & Johnson, ticker J&J. So that's a stock that's doing really well this morning. Shares up just over 4%. Earlier, they were up even higher, 6%. And that's it for the biggest gain in 2 years. We did see their second quarter sales at $23.7 billion, beating expectations. Company also raising its full year outlook. And so it's interesting because we did have President Trump speaking a week earlier saying that he would impose tariffs of as high as 200% on drug companies if they don't start shifting their manufacturing toward the U.S. in the next 18 months. But then according to CFO Joe Wolk, that's actually good news because that means it's a slow ramp up to tariffs. And the 18-month runway is a recognition that it takes some time for companies to be able to do this, right? And so they're treating that as good news. Shareholders like it, and we're seeing its first gain in 3 sessions.
Very good. Christina Aquino, managing editor for Markets Live for Bloomberg News. And if you want more conversations like this, subscribe to our new Stock Movers Reports. Listen for 5-minute audio reports on the biggest winners and losers in the stock market. Subscribe to Stock Movers on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you listen. Let's get the latest on the trade news, the tariff news. It is fluid to say the least. And we're talking with Brendan Murray. He's global trade editor for Bloomberg News. Brendan, what's the latest here on this ever-changing situation? What are you paying attention to?
Well, the latest thing we got was this deal that the president announced with Indonesia, which Indonesia actually confirmed that it did happen. That was unlike the announcement Trump made about Vietnam, where Vietnam still hasn't confirmed there. So we basically have 2 deals in the bag out of many dozens. The UK, which signed theirs a month or 2 ago, and now we have Indonesia. There are also others in the works with India, with potentially Taiwan, with the European Union and Switzerland. So there are multiple balls in the air right now that the administration is juggling when it comes to trying to bring these talks over the finish line. There's a lot of complicated issues, and it could go right down to the August 1st deadline that the president has laid out. So one of the main things that we're looking for is how much the administration, how much flexibility there is in that reciprocal tariff rate. It's currently at a base of 10%. It's up as high as in the mid 40s for several countries. So Indonesia brought theirs down to 19% from a threatened 32%. So there's some wiggle room there. It just depends on what these countries are willing to offer and whether Trump is willing to accept those.
Now, Brendan, President Trump also said higher rates for pharmaceuticals could be coming sooner than later. So why the change? And is this going to be kind of a quick change, a slow progression?
Yeah. Well, these pharmaceutical tariffs and these sectoral tariffs in general play into these other bilateral negotiations. The European Union has a lot of pharmaceutical companies that export to the U.S. India as well would be threatened by pharmaceutical tariffs. So there are points of leverage that the president is imposing on these talks to try to drive things toward a deal. A lot of those countries are worried about the sectoral tariffs on pharmaceuticals. Something on semiconductors is also in the works. We've already got it on steel, aluminum, and cars, and copper was another one that's most recently. So all of these are the cards that President Trump is playing at the table, at these negotiating tables, and they will apply pressure just as much as the reciprocal tariffs will.
Brendan, August 1st is being held out by President Trump as a date where he wants deals done, or a lot of these tariffs are going to go into effect. What do we know about that August 1st date? How hard is that?
Well, the president would say, and he's, we've seen this strategy before, that it's immovable, that there's no flexibility in it. That's the date when this tariff is going to kick in. But of course, we went through July 9th, the previous deadline, and that was pushed back by 3 or 4 weeks. So you never really know. That's part of the strategy here, is to keep the trading partner off balance, keep things uncertain, keep them kind of guessing as to whether he's serious this time or not. It seems to be baked into the strategy more broadly. The other deadline coming up in August is the end of the ceasefire in the U.S.-China tariff situation. And Treasury Secretary Bessent said on Bloomberg Television yesterday, actually, that there is some flexibility in that. So there seems to be some flexibility in it for China at the moment, but the president has indicated none of that yet for these other major U.S. trading partners.
And Brendan, before you go, you mentioned semiconductors. So does it go beyond chips, though? I mean, can this also hit products like Apple, Samsung, laptops, smartphones, things like that?
Yeah, potentially. One of the hallmarks of these 232, these sectoral tariff investigations, is it won't only hit the raw material or the specific item. It could be expanded to include products that include them. The Trump administration did this with the steel and aluminum tariffs. They threw in, washing machines and some products made with steel and aluminum. So they can be pretty broad, and they can hit a pretty wide range of products.
Brendan, thank you so much for your reporting once again. Brendan Murray, global trade editor for Bloomberg News. He's over there in our London offices, Queen Victoria Street. And again, the tariffs are a fluid situation. August 1st date is out there. It looks like negotiations are going on with many countries. The most recent one, we saw something from Indonesia, as Brendan just reported. We'll stay on top of that. Mixed market here. The S&P 500 is pretty much unchanged on the day. 30-year Treasury, 4.98%. This is Bloomberg.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
It's 10:21 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. We got the S&P 500 index back in the green. This Bloomberg Business Flash is brought to you by Oracle. Attention growing businesses. Oracle's offering to cut your current cloud bill in half if you move to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure for new U.S. customers with minimum financial commitment. See if your company qualifies at oracle.com/Bloomberg. Lots of earnings and a choppy start to the trading day. We're roughly 50 minutes in. We've got the S&P now up 562.49 after swinging between gains and losses, up by about 0.1%. The Dow up 76 now, higher by 0.2%. NASDAQ, though, remains swinging between gains and losses, up now by 1 point. Little change there. The key takeaway, the Russell 2000 index of small cap shares up by about 0.6%. 10-year 4.44%. The 2-year 3.92%. Gold up $2 the ounce, up by about 0.1%. And West Texas Intermediate crude down 1.1%, 65.81 for a barrel of WTI. Again, stocks now trading higher across the board with the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all in the green. NASDAQ just turning higher, up under 0.1%. Earnings news, J&J shares, they're up 4.7%. Johnson & Johnson beat Wall Street's quarterly sales expectations. It also raised its full-year outlook. J&J up now by 4.7%. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right. Thank you, Charlie. This is Bloomberg Intelligence. I'm Lisa Mateo alongside Paul Sweeney. We do have some news out of Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. So it's creating this new strategy committee, turning to Elliott Investment Management for help with this. Here with all the details and to break it all down for us is Woo-Jin Hu, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Technology Analyst. Woo-Jin, thank you for joining us. I want to start with, of course, who is involved in, who is part of this committee?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Lisa. So it is a hand-picked board member by Elliott Management. Keep in mind, Elliott is an activist investor that has a 10% plus shareholding of HPE. I believe they made their position early in this year. And who they appointed was Bob Calderoni, who has done similar type of deals in terms of taking companies private, or more importantly, operational streamlining. So any changes, I think Elliott is going to try through Bob to affect a lot of changes at HPE.
Would you just remind us what HPE is today, number one, and number two, what do they need to fix to move this thing forward?
Yeah, hey Paul. So HPE is one of the leading enterprise IT infrastructure vendors. They provide servers, storage, now a bigger networking presence with the Juniper acquisition. And actually, quite frankly, there's quite a bit to fix. From an operational standpoint, they fumbled the first quarter results by mispricing their server business, and it seems to be reconciled now, but it flags some of the operational issues, number one. Number two, they have made a lot of M&A that just didn't create the synergies that they had hoped. So, they did hire the former HP CFO to streamline the financials, and with the Juniper merger starting underway, I suspect that the new strategy board it will try to find more operational synergies between the two networking businesses.
Woo-Jin, can you dig more into how it's under pressure, kind of like lagging behind Dell in growing AI? What kind of pressures are facing in that market? Yeah,
so if we think about AI, right? HPE actually owns Cray, and we think about high performance compute. They are the market leaders there. They weren't able. HPE has not been able to transition that Cray business elegantly to the AI side of things. So let me put this into context. I think HPE should be on track for about $3 to $4 billion in AI sales this year, possibly 4 to 5, right? Dell is going to be on track for about $15 billion this year, and Supermicro is probably on track for about $20 billion this year. So they've lagged on the AI front, even though they have some of the leading technologies in high performance compute. That's an area that could be fixable under the right hands.
One more here. before we let you go, Wooj, is just, you mentioned they own Cray, they own Juniper. If I'm Elliott Management, am I thinking about maybe they could be selling or spinning off some of these businesses to enhance value?
Well, Bob Calderoni used to be on the Juniper board, and they actually helped with the operational streamlining of Juniper, right? So I think you want to keep Juniper.
Okay.
Right? There are other aspects of the networking business that you could probably parse away, right? The Cray business you'd want to keep because AI is going to be the growth engine and also help you transition to the enterprise AI.
All right. Woo Jin Ho, thank you so much for joining us. Woo Jin Ho is Senior Tech Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, based down there at our BI offices down there in Princeton, New Jersey. Let's get back to the economic data. We had CPI yesterday, PPI today. I don't know. I'm not seeing a whole lot of inflation out there. But let's talk to somebody who actually gets paid to look at this stuff for real. Our good friend, Yelena Shuletieva, economist at the Conference Board. Yelena, thanks for being in our studio. Appreciate it. It's great to see you again, longtime Bloomberger. We're not seeing inflation to really any meaningful level here. Does that surprise you at all?
Well, probably, Paul, because you're buying a lot of services and not goods.
Okay.
So it's really a story of two tales here. So you do see a pass-through of tariffs into the goods inflation. So it was evident in the data yesterday in the CPI report. It was already evident in the PPI data this morning, so you do see a pickup in goods prices. But that comes at the expense of lower demand for services. So, and that is pushing, that is keeping prices for services in check. So what matters for the Fed, obviously, is the overall growth in inflation. Probably we haven't seen the full extent of it. That is why it's so important to watch what happens to the data over the summer months. But I think that it would be premature for them to cut rates at this month's meeting and going into September. I think December is probably the best case.
You mentioned it. Okay, I was going to ask if you adjusted your Fed cut rate, so you answered my question there.
Not on this data.
Okay.
But overall, the data was coming in a bit better than expected for consumers, for the labor market, and that kind of resilience led us to revise our GDP projections a little bit so that the trough in economic activity happens towards the end of the year, in the fourth quarter, and not in the third quarter that we previously expected. So also the pass-through of tariffs seems to be happening at a little bit of a slower pace. Companies stocked up on cheaper inventories earlier, and they are releasing it into the economy right now. So, but we are going to see this higher prices in the summer months and going into the second half of the year. And that would weigh on consumer spending in the second half of the year as well.
So the consumer right now, as you mentioned, seems pretty solid. How solid do you think they're going to be when maybe inflation does become a little bit more prevalent?
So consumers, it's a very difficult question. So on one hand, you do see the overall pace of spending remaining at a solid level. It's all kind of a happy consumer kind of thing. And obviously, if you look at the quarterly results from the banks, it's also telling you that consumers are in a good spot. But you do see some weaknesses. And it's not only about the increase in goods prices. You also have to factor in what happens to student loans, the availability to get a student loan, credit scores, things like that, that all, together would limit the extent to which consumer spending could grow, especially going into the Christmas season and early next year.
Yeah, so consumer spending, we have retail sales coming up this week too. Do you think it's going to disappoint? What's your take?
I think it's going to disappoint. And even if it's a positive surprise for any reason, I would look into real retail sales. It's not a perfect measure, but you at least have to discount it by CPI data that is available. Because remember, retail sales are reported in nominal dollars. So if it's a positive number, is it an increase in inflation or is it an increase in real spending? Also, I will be looking at goods versus services. Unfortunately, there's only one category that goes into retail sales report in terms of services. It's restaurant spending. So Is it weak? Is it strong? That will tell us a little bit more about whether consumers are spending on discretionary items, such as going out, for example. That would tell us a little bit about the state of the consumer going forward.
Red headline crossing the Bloomberg terminal, and I always love these. Citigroup poaches 2 senior J.P. Morgan bankers in a hiring push. Right as these companies reporting earnings, we'll have more reporting on that. Yelena, the labor market still seems like if everybody wants a job, they can get a job. Are there cracks there, or does it still look pretty solid?
Still solid. I agree with that. And going forward, maybe we will not see a significant increase in the unemployment rate. Here as well, it's a story of two tales. So it's about the demand for labor and it's about the supply of labor. Both are kind of weakening. That is evident in the data that we see. So which one weakens quicker is going to define what happens to the unemployment rate, the metric that the FOMC watches. So it's not only about immigration, right? Immigration, we know the inflows are slowing, and that is putting a weight on the supply of labor. It's also aging of the population. The structural change that has always been there, despite, presidential elections, despite all the things that are happening in the monetary policy, the structural change, the supply of labor is shrinking because we are getting older. So that is putting a downward pressure on the unemployment rate. And at the end of the day, that the unemployment rate is what matters for the Fed and for them to conduct monetary policy.
Last kind of 30 seconds we have less. Let's talk about the pressure surrounding Fed Chair Jay Powell to step down. The question for you is, should the markets kind of be pricing in any pressure on this?
Well, my opinion probably won't matter. The markets will vote on, the next Fed chair before the Senate does. But the Senate will need to approve the nomination. So that's one thing that I would note. And another thing is that if you think about the meetings next year, there will be 5 meetings without Chair Powell if he actually finishes his term in early next year. So could be a lot of dissents next year, and that's not positive for the markets.
All right, Yelena, thank you so much for joining us. Always appreciate getting some of Yelena's commentary. Yelena Shilatieva, economist for the Conference Board, joining us live here in our Bloomberg Interactive broker studio. Coming up, we're going to check in and get some more on the news coming out of some of these banks. Allison Williams, Bloomberg Intelligence. She covers all the big banks. She's been busy the past couple of days, and we'll get her wrap up of what we've seen out of seemingly some pretty, really good numbers out of some of the big banks. They're doing very well, it seems. Looking at the market here, kind of mixed, not a whole lot, a little bit.